Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Chris-Tia Donaldson Breast Cancer Equity Symposium, Wellness and Wisdom. It is truly, truly an honor to be with you all tonight in the memory and legacy of Chris-Tia Donaldson, whose impact continues to inspire of movement and breast health awareness, advocacy, and equity. This evening is more than just about awareness. It's about connection. It's about mothers and daughters. It's about sisters and friends coming together to have conversations that can literally save a life. Tonight, you'll hear from an amazing panel of experts, health professionals, and survivors. Our hope is that you leave inspired to talk openly, act early, and live fully for yourself and for the women that you love. I will begin by reading the bios of our esteemed panel one by one. Beginning with our moderator for tonight, Dr. Piper Farrell. She serves as the managing partner and chief operating officer of Thank God It's Natural, TGIN, a leading texture hair care brand. Since October 2021, she has brought her expertise in education, leadership, and research to the company, advancing the legacy of her sister and TGIN founder, Chris-Tia Donaldson. Dr. Farrell has played a pivotal role in expanding TGIN into over 10,000 retail locations, including Ulta Beauty, Target, Sally Beauty, and Whole Foods, while driving the brand's mission to empower women to embrace their authenticity. Through the TGIN Foundation, Dr. Farrell honors her sister's legacy by advocating for breast health, addressing health disparities in Black communities, and supporting breast cancer survivors facing financial hardships. Welcome, Dr. Piper Farrell.
Thank you.
Dr. Sonia Bollet is an associate professor of radiology and the director and physician lead of ambulatory breast radiology at Northwestern University, Feinberg School of Medicine. Dr. Bollet completed radiology residency and breast imaging fellowship training at Northwestern. Although a breast imager clinically, she is actively involved in teaching, research, and national committees. Her true passion, however, lies in community outreach, preventative education, and increasing awareness about breast cancer from the unique perspective of a radiologist. Welcome, Dr. Bollet.
Thanks for having
Dr.
me.
Thank you. Dr. Santina Wheat is an academic family physician with Northwestern Medicine who finds joy in helping others unlock their full potential. Passionate about belonging, community, and improving access to care, she also serves as a career and life coach, guiding physicians and healthcare workers from burnout to balance. Through personalized coaching, she helps them rediscover their purpose, set boundaries, and reclaim joy in both work and life. Having navigated her own career challenges, she understands the power of mentorship and intentional growth. Welcome, Dr. Wheat.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Kelsey Mora is the Chief Clinical Officer at Pickles Group, a nonprofit that provides free support and resources to children and teens impacted by a parent's cancer. She is a certified child life specialist and licensed clinical professional counselor with extensive experience supporting families navigating medical illness, injury, and grief. Kelsey specializes in guiding caregivers and creating opportunities for children and teens to strengthen coping, communication, and connection. She is also the author of the DOT Method, an interactive tool to teach kids about cancer. Welcome, Kelsey.
Thanks. Hi, everyone.
And last but definitely not least is L'Oreal Jackson, a two-time breast cancer survivor, former educator, and passionate breast health advocate. She is also the creator of Breast Care Besties, a wellness-focused brand and community dedicated to empowering women under 40 through education, advocacy, and shared healing. L'Oreal blends research, storytelling, and her lived experience to spark impactful, relatable conversations around early detection, self advocacy, and healing. Through her platform, Breast Care Besties, she develops content, curates resources, and builds community through events that empower women to take charge of their breast and overall health. Her mission is to create inclusive, accessible spaces where women's health concerns are acknowledged, demystified, and prioritized. Welcome, L'Oreal.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. Now we're going to go ahead and let's begin this powerful conversation. And we're going to go ahead and start with just a few questions for our moderator today, Dr. Piper Farrell. How are you feeling today, Dr. Piper?
I am awesome. Thank you so much, Monique. And to the Lurie Cancer Center, I really appreciate, you all extending this opportunity for us to be a part of the discussion about breast cancer for women.
Absolutely. We're so happy to have you. And we know that this symposium, we've been doing it annually, and it's in honor of your sister, Chris-Tia. Can you share a little about her legacy and why breast health education is so deeply personal for you?
Sure. Chris-Tia, as you mentioned, was my sister. And in 2015, she was diagnosed at the age of 36 with breast cancer. And during her breast cancer journey, she realized and recognized that, access and education for women in the African American community looked different than for women in other communities. So she decided that, in order to close this gap and bring, attention to this, she created the TGIN Foundation. She had already founded TGIN, or Thank God It's Natural Hair Care Company. So she used that platform to create the foundation to raise awareness and bring attention and education to breast cancer in the Black community in Chicago.
Oh, thank you for that. And I think last year when we had our symposium, we talked a little bit about how we really wanted to start targeting younger ladies and breast health in general. What is it that you really want mothers and daughters to take away from the conversation that we have this evening?
Well, I hope tonight's conversation leads to more transparent conversations between mothers and daughters and erases that shame and that stigma that exists around those tough conversations. Sometimes we want to creep around the health or wellness or conversations about women's issues. And I want tonight to be the beginning of conversations between mothers and daughters about the importance of women's health and removing that shame and stigma. We all go through it. It's natural part of growing and being a woman.
Absolutely. I know one of the things I often like to say when we have events is that prevention starts at home.
It does.
So, yeah, I know one of the things that we really want to push forward this evening is how some of these health conversations should start happening at home. If
Mhm.
Christia were here with us today, what message do you think that she would be giving us?
She would tell us that self-care is not selfish and to take time to nurture and nourish yourself.
Absolutely. I am all for self-care. And Dr. Piper, I am going to go ahead and let you do your thing and speak with our lovely panelists today. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Monique. Well, hello and welcome everyone to the Chris-Tia Donaldson Breast Health Symposium. We are excited that you are here tonight for this very important conversation. But first of all, I want to shout out to some friends I have watching over here on 83rd and Damon, to my Girl Scout and my Brownie troops. I salute you. I'm a former Girl Scout and a Brownie, so I see y'all. Hey there. I sent y'all some treats, so glad to have you all here, and to all the other participants that are here. We're here tonight to have a thoughtful and inspiring conversation about women's health and breast cancer and what we can do to get in the conversation, stay in the conversation, and be an important part of this movement. So I'm going to start with my good friend over here, Dr. Bole, Dr. Sonia Bole. She has been an instrumental part of TGIN and helping us navigate those questions, those research ideals that we want to know so much about. So Dr. Bole, welcome.
Thank you
Welcome
for
to the
having
panel.
me. Thank
Hey,
you.
we keep doing this. I think we got something going on here.
I just
So
love your foundation. I just think it's really incredible, and it's doing the work that we're doing as breast radiologists, boots on the ground, really boots on the
I
ground work.
love it.
Just admire you guys so much.
I love it. Well, Dr. Bole, I didn't know this. I understand that you have a podcast and it's
do.
called You're the Doctor, right? Is that correct?
It's called You're a Doctor, right? So it's the
Okay.
question that I kept getting at cocktail parties. You know, they would come up and say, You're a doctor, right? And then they would ask a question that had nothing to do with breast imaging. Can you look at my kid's rash? Or here's a picture of something on my skin. Or, you know, what do I do when I have a headache? And I'm like, I'm a breast radiologist. So that's kind of how it started.
Well, that's good to know. I didn't know that. So tell me a little bit about your podcast. How do you convey the importance of mammograms to a teenager or to a young adult?
Yeah, so really the premise of this podcast was because there's so much misinformation out there. There's so much information and misinformation. And health anxiety is real. Even people like doctors have it when they go in for their own appointments. You know, they're worried about what could be out there because there's so much misinformation and information, and medical things can be very complex. And
Mhm.
so the purpose of the podcast was really, the thing is everyone has the same questions. So it was really tackling those same questions that we were getting all the time and doing it in a light conversational type of way. And that's exactly how I would do this with young adults and teenagers. Because, you know, I think all of us have this tendency to want to shield our kids. We don't want to talk about scary things. We don't want to talk about sad things. We don't want to talk about medical things. But you can
Mhm.
talk about medical things and it not be scary, especially a lot of preventative things. So in our house, my husband's also a physician. Medical words are always being thrown around. You know, my sons, of course, are 5 and 8. They think it's hilarious that I'm looking at boobies all day. My daughter has so many questions about when is she going to get them, and what are we doing with them, and what are they used for? And so I think we just talk about things in a very conversational way. And I think you can do that at home too. And you don't have to say the ACR recommends that everyone start screening mammograms at the age of 40. But you know, we all sit around the table and talk to our family at dinner. And you know, how was your day today? Well, mommy went for a mammogram. You know, what is, you know, and just talking about that. You went for your dentist appointment. I went for my mammogram. And just bringing up health things in a very conversational, normal way can help just navigate that as they get older.
I'm glad you bring awareness to that. I think one of the biggest myths, before I actually turned 40, I'm only 41. No, just kidding. But one of the biggest myths that I remember hearing about mammograms is like how painful they were. You know, they're going to take you in there and just going to just abuse you, smash you, and send you on your way. Can you kind of break down for us what a mammogram is? We do have a younger audience here.
Yeah.
And so can you break down what a mammogram is and when women should theoretically start scheduling them?
Yeah, absolutely. So a mammogram is just, you know, we all are, even our kids, like my kids were 3, they were taking pictures with my phone, right? They know how to use iPhone. So it's really just a picture of your breast. And so they're two different pictures in a screening mammogram. We take 2 pictures of each breast. In a diagnostic mammogram, we take more. And the difference between a screening and diagnostic mammogram, a lot of people don't realize. But a screening mammogram is really a patient that's coming in or a person that's coming in with no symptoms but meeting criteria for mammograms, whether that's average risk at age 40 or prior to that because of a higher risk. And you come in, no symptoms, you get 2 pictures of your breast, and you get your results in my chart or in the mail. A diagnostic mammogram is the same machine. It's just more pictures and it's done to evaluate some sort of symptom that you're having. So a screening mammogram you should get whenever you meet criteria based on your risk. A diagnostic mammogram you get if you have some sort of symptom, so pain or something you're feeling, or nipple discharge. And we can talk about some of that stuff a little bit later on things that we should watch for in our breast. But the diagnostic mammogram you should get whenever you are feeling those new symptoms. And if it's okay, I'd love to address the pain issue as well, because I do
Okay,
think that's
please.
actually the most common question we get, and one of the most biggest fears of mammograms is the pain. And you know, I don't like getting mine either; it hurts me as well. But I think that if we can explain to people why, and maybe we should say for the younger audience, the reason there is that pain is because we do have to press on your breast in order to get a good picture. But the reason we do that is because the more pressure we put actually decreases the amount of radiation we need to take that picture. And people
Mhm.
are scared of radiation, right? But if we can
Right.
actually compress the breast more, you need less radiation to take the picture. And you get a better picture because you're actually spreading the tissue out. So you're able to kind of look through the tissue to see it. And so me as a radiologist, even though it hurts me when I'm getting my mammogram, the whole time I'm like, okay, pain is for, we say beauty is pain all the time. We get Botox, we do all this stuff. So we can stand a few seconds to sit there and have a little bit of pain to get the best picture for the radiologist.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you for that, Dr. Bolay. Let me ask you just one more question. What are some red flags or changes in breasts that both mothers and daughters maybe shouldn't ignore? As a young woman coming up, you're coming into being, your body is going through all of these changes. You don't know what's normal, what's not normal. What are some red flags or changes that maybe that young women should make their mothers aware of?
Yeah. And actually, before I jump into this, I should probably do a shout out to my mom. I heard you do a shout out. So my mom's listening on here from Georgia. So hi, mom. Glad you're listening. I think here's the thing. Any new change in your breast is something you should be aware of. And actually, it's interesting. Major societies in the past 3 to 4 years have been kind of moving away from a formal clinical breast exam. And that's because so many of these can actually cause a false positive. So you feel something and you go and get worked up. And I know Dr. Wheat's nodding as a family physician. I'm sure you see this as well. But you go in and you feel something that gets extra biopsies, works up, and can cause a lot more anxiety. Or it can even cause people to have false sense of reassurance. So they feel nothing and they're like, I'm fine. I don't feel anything. I don't have a family history, which 85% of our patients don't have a family history that have breast cancer. So that's really important to remember. And they don't get their mammogram. So now we're talking about breast awareness. So you should be aware of your breast. You should know what's normal for you for your breast. And if that means that the best way to do that is a formal breast exam, great. But the most important part is be familiar with your breast. Any new changes. So something new that you're feeling that's different on one side from the other. Nipple discharge. We worry about bloody coming out on its own from one duct. Those are 3 things we worry about. Any new pain, any new skin changes, really anything new. I mean, you should know your breast so that if something is new, you know it's new. And that's when you go and talk to your doctor.
Great. Well, thank you for that insightful information and for breaking it down in such an approachable way. And hopefully we have, diminished some of the fear around mammograms. So we thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And right now we're going to pivot over to Dr. Wheat. Dr. Wheat, I know you have double duty going on. You have mommy duty, but we thank you and we appreciate so much you being here with us tonight. And as mentioned, you are a family physician. So Dr. Wheat, please tell us what patterns are you seeing when it comes to mothers and daughters approaching preventative care together?
Yeah, today was actually an amazing day because I had a mother and daughter show up in my office today and we were able to have some of this conversation. And so it just felt wonderful for that to happen in October as we were getting ready for this conversation. So I think that I see 2 separate things. I see some families that are having no conversations at all. And I think that sometimes it's because families have been taught that you don't have conversations about your body. And that's where I get nervous because, as was just mentioned, what we really want in healthcare is for you to have an awareness of your body because we want you to know your body best so that you can bring the problems to you. It might not be that I send you to the radiologist. It might be that I send you to, or it might just be that you come in and see me and we talk through the different things that happen. Sometimes I'm seeing great conversations with mothers and daughters and even fathers and daughters. So I don't want to exclude the dads in this either. And so sometimes it's oh, mom, what did you experience when you were my age? Or, oh, dad, do you happen to know what grandma experienced or what your sisters experienced when they were my age? And that's a question that I will start asking my young patients. So as a family doctor, I see people from the time they're babies all the way until saw a 97-year-old today. So I really see everybody. And so I ask what happens in your family because it helps you also get a sense of what's normal for your family, even if you aren't really following the mold. I also, though, am the mom of 2 girls. I have a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old. And the thing that's interesting to me is girls know more right now than they did when I was a teenager, right? They have more information, sometimes because of social media. Sometimes schools are teaching more. And so I do think that there's some improvement in the awareness of bodies. I highly echo the sentiment of start talking about these things in your household. Talk about I went to get this exam done, or this part of my body is bothering me, or what changes are you worried about, to help normalize those conversations.
I appreciate those insightful thoughts because it's difficult when you're a mother, especially of a young woman, and kids start developing way faster now. It's like they come out talking now, so they're developing much faster, and sometimes we as parents aren't ready to have that conversation because someone talked to us at 12 or 13, and now you have an 8-year-old that is going through changes in their body. So what type of techniques or things can you suggest for us to have age appropriate ways to introduce breast health discussions with our young daughters?
So first, I would say don't be afraid to ask your pediatrician or your family doctor. We are happy to help you have those conversations because sometimes you might not feel like you have the words, and we do. That's part of our job. We're happy to help in those conversations. But one of the things that I think can be helpful is just to say, hey, have you noticed any changes in your body? Are you worried about them? Or the way that I sometimes approach things with primarily the teenagers in my clinic office is they sometimes don't want to tell me about themselves right away, but they're willing to talk about their friends first. And so I'll start by saying, hey, what's happening with your friends? Have you noticed any of these things? And we'll start that conversation and get them a little bit more comfortable with it, and then bring it closer to the personal. That's something I do with my own kids too. Like, they're willing to talk about something bothering, like somebody else having a girlfriend first, or somebody else having a boyfriend first. And then we can bring that into home. And you're right, I do see more girls developing earlier, not necessarily too early, but potentially girls of color. I'm seeing a lot of our girls being fully developed at age 9 or 10. It's normal to have a period at that time. And waiting to have those conversations until they're 11 or 12 can be too late. And so if you're having breast pain at 13, that can be very normal. If you're having a period, that's a very normal experience. But if you haven't talked about it yet, that can feel very scary and isolating. And so starting to have the questions before it happens, because I find that when you are able to talk about it before it happens so that it's not scary, or that you have a safe place to turn to, can be really reassuring, both for you as a parent and then also for you as a kid, for the kids watching.
Amazing. So tell me a little bit about 3 takeaways that you would want to share with every mother and daughter to start maybe having a conversation about prioritizing breast health.
The first is get to know your body. And breast health is just one piece of it. So some of it is knowing what your breasts feel like, whether you have pain, what the size is, what they look like. The skin changes are important too. In my family, the member of my family that had breast cancer had inflammatory breast cancer. So that actually started as a skin change and wasn't picked up on imaging. And so it's important to be aware of that. I think that's number one. I think number two is to create just a space to have a conversation. And maybe it's a silly trick. My oldest and I had difficult, if you will, conversations for her that she was scared to talk to me about in the car. She really liked them because I wasn't staring at her. So she would be in the back seat and I would be driving, and she could ask me anything she wanted. And it was funny because then when she had her conversation with her doctor, she was like, Mom, she looked at me in the eyes. What was that all about? But so it just provided this safe space for her to have a conversation. So have a safe way to have an uncomfortable conversation, and then it will become more comfortable. She now looks at me in the eyes for those conversations. And then I also would say it's okay to say, I don't know. And when you have those questions that are, I don't knows, write them down and bring those to your doctor's visits. That's what we're here for. Or anything that feels alarming, bring those faster. But that's what we want to help you in those. We want to help demystify anything that's going on.
Amazing. So my last question for you, tell me, in your opinion, how do equity and access to care intersect with the urgency of these conversations?
I think that's such an important question. One of my passions is equity. And I think that we could talk about this in itself for hours. And I think one of the pieces is just having trust with the healthcare providers that you're interacting with. You can't get that referral for a mammogram. You can't get that biopsy. You can't get that just clinical breast exam if you don't feel comfortable telling your physician, your nurse practitioner, your PA, whomever, about your complaint. And so we really just need to, in my opinion, focus on ensuring that we have safe spaces for all of us to go to where we feel comfortable having that trust in the exam room where we can have those conversations. And so the way I'm managing that is my main job is teaching learners, is teaching other family medicine physicians to be comfortable having those conversations, because I think that it's important for us to meet everyone where they are, to be able to have those conversations and understand that there's mistrust with healthcare, there's misinformation out there, especially right now, to help break down those divides. Because the first step is just sort of walking into that exam room and making sure that it's available.
Thank you so much, Dr. Waite. And that's a perfect reminder of how advocacy begins at home and continues in the exam room. Thank you for the work that you do and for being, an advocate for us in the breast health arena. Now we will pivot over to Kelsey Mora. So Kelsey, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I understand that you do a lot of work with families that have parents that have cancer. Can you tell me a little bit about what unique challenges you're seeing in these families and having open conversations about health, especially breast health?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the number one kind of first step that we prioritize and advocate for at Pickles Group and beyond, is really helping adults feel more confident having conversations with their children at any age. I know we've talked a lot about teens here, but including infants and toddlers, like starting really early, because we know, a lot of times when navigating breast cancer, it can last, many, many years. It can be chronic. Even survivorship can come with challenges. And so kids will age through that breast cancer diagnosis and treatment. And so starting really early, whether that's prevention or at the time of diagnosis, being able to navigate those conversations as they shift and change as a child gets older. So we talk about it at all ages, how to talk to kids about cancer, how to talk about breast cancer. And then once we've encouraged and helped parents have those difficult conversations, we're really trying to create spaces for kids to talk to other kids. We have something called Phone a Pickles Friend in our peer groups. And when I came online tonight to do this important discussion, I saw that there were a lot of questions from this Sunday from our youth. So asking things like, can you get butt cancer was one of the questions. Can men get breast cancer? How long will someone have to stay in the hospital after surgery? Like, these kids have these questions, whether we're talking about them or not. And so sometimes they're more scared by what they don't understand or what's not being discussed.
That's a great segue into my next question. As you help children manage and navigate the medical side of cancer and trying to help them understand, how do you help them engage and manage the emotional and the relational side to breast cancer?
Yeah. So, communication obviously is one of those pillars, just having the honest communication so that they understand at their age or developmental level what's going on. And then building coping skills is a huge part of thriving through a cancer diagnosis. The research really shows that when kids have honest information, coping skills, and then also peer connection, that they can really have improved outcomes, for their mental health. And so, and we see those as life skills. We don't need to wait for a cancer diagnosis to teach kids coping skills, but certainly when navigating parents' cancer or cancer in the family, those coping skills will be essential. So and also that coping is not, one size fits all. We have these amazing peer leaders that speak to their lived experience, and the kids are saying things like, I just needed to go play like wall ball and move my body, right? And like, that's great. Not everyone needs to breathe and meditate. Like, you can go play and move your body. And if that helps you get your feelings out, that is important, and that's okay. And so really normalizing coping and explaining that these are life skills so that you'll have them whenever you face, hardship or challenge. And that last piece is that peer connection, knowing that they're not alone and that there's other kids and families facing a similar experience.
So, Kelsey, talk to me a minute about what role daughters can play in helping their mothers manage or navigate, breast health or a breast health exam. Sometimes we get an exam and they call us back because they want to do another, more deeper exam. How can our young daughters help us navigate and mitigate that situation?
Yeah, it's such an important question, just that bi-directional support throughout the whole family. I just had an email this week from a parent who's like, they saw something new on my MRI. I'm freaking out. I won't have another appointment for 3 months. Like, I'm sure the kids are picking up on my behavior, right? And so kids
Mhm.
notice when something's not quite right, when a parent is stressed or a parent is anxious or nervous. And so parents that can name that for their kids, even without all the details that they may or may not have yet, I'm feeling really nervous about this. And by naming that, it opens the door for kids and teenagers to be able to engage in that bi-directional support that we're in this together. It's okay to have those feelings and we can navigate them together. And that can be extremely empowering for young kids and teens and adults to feel like they can help and have a role, and that all feelings are okay. It gives them permission to be nervous and sad too, and also to be kids. Sometimes they might just need to hang out with their friends and play and laugh, and that's okay too. And so it just opens the door to all of these feelings are okay, and we can feel them and navigate them together.
Great. So from a counseling perspective, what tools do you use to maybe help break down the stigma or silence around breast health?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to want to meet families where they're at and really understand what's contributing to those fears or that resistance. Every family has their unique lived experience and culture in their family, and there may be reasons why they're really scared. We don't talk about these things with kids. We need to protect kids. It's too much. It's too scary. And so once I understand what's contributing to those fears and those beliefs, then I can meet families where they're at and kind of move to a place that feels comfortable for everybody. Sometimes I'll start with, I get that it's really scary to talk about all of this at once. Let's think about what your kids are seeing. What are they experiencing? Let's start there. And then sometimes parents are like, yeah, they're probably seeing me, really weak and tired and not feeling as good, or they know that I was in the hospital, but they don't really know why. Okay, great. Let's start there. We don't have to talk about everything all at once. Let's talk about what's right in front of us, and then we can build on those conversations over time. It's really not um, a one and done conversation. It's a lot of bite-sized conversations. And so being able to help families start somewhere and really meet them where they're at, because I think sometimes it just feels like too much, and that's where a lot of the avoidance comes in. And to some of the points that were already shared, also normalizing that just because we're talking about cancer doesn't mean that's all we have to be talking about, that we can still have some really normal moments in between. And often when kids trust that you'll update them when there are updates, they tend to worry a little bit less because they know, okay, we can live our life normally and we can talk about this when we need to and when I want to. And that can feel really
Mhm.
empowering for them.
Yes. So, Kelsey, what would you say to the family? My sister didn't have the breast cancer gene. There was no history of breast cancer in our family. So, what do you say to families who, feel, oh, it won't happen to us, or breast cancer doesn't run in our family, and therefore they avoid the topic? So, how do you engage them in saying, it may not happen to you, but it's a possibility and it's something you need to be having conversations about?
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, that to me sounds like hope a lot, right? Yeah, I hope for that too. I hope that it doesn't happen to you. I hope that it doesn't happen to anyone. And sometimes having these conversations early and naturally can make any subsequent conversation just that much easier, whether it's talking about, like others have said, your body, just general health, wellness. Kids need to understand why they go to the doctor every year and what to prepare for. I have a 3 and a 5 year old, and since my son was, I think, 2, we started talking about, do you have any questions for the doctor? Like, let's write them down. What do you want to know about your body and your health? And sometimes it's just like, one was like, how much screen time is safe? I was like, yes, let's ask the doctor that, right? I would love for that to come from the doctor. So really empowering even little ones just about general health. And then, like I said, it can um, build over time. And unfortunately, cancer is so prevalent and happening so much younger. the early detection is huge. And
Mhm.
I, so many of the youth we see at Pickles Group, like their friends are impacted by their experience as well. And so just because it won't happen in their family doesn't mean it won't happen in their community. And so these are really important topics to just talk about to create inclusive environments for all kids, regardless of who it's specifically happening to. So I think that's really important just from a community lens.
Well, thank you, Kelsey, for sharing those answers, and for, keeping breast cancer at the forefront of our minds and our families and helping us to navigate and have those tough conversations. So thank you again. Now we turn to L'Oreal Jackson, two-time cancer warrior and advocate. And L'Oreal, we have a personal connection, our TGIN connection. Everyone, L'Oreal used to work with TGIN and did a phenomenal job in our marketing department. And she went on from TGIN and used her inspiration to start her own breast cancer awareness organization. She is a warrior, she's a fighter, and a smart young lady. L'Oreal, thank you for joining us. We miss
Thank
you
you.
here.
I miss y'all too. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the work that you and Aries continue to do to uphold the legacy of Chris-Tia. As you mentioned, working on the team, everybody who knows her, they always had the most highest, nicest things to say about her. So just thank you to the work that you're continuing to do.
And thank you for joining us in the fight. That's so inspirational that you were with us and that you saw the importance of having these conversations and, taking it, to Atlanta.
Thank you. Thank you.
So L'Oreal, tell me about your fight as a breast cancer survivor. What was it like to have those first initial conversations about your diagnosis with your family?
So I am a two-time breast cancer survivor. I was diagnosed first at 24 years old. I noticed a lump in my breast, and I was due for a mammogram. So I brought it up to my gynecologist, but I didn't have any prior, I guess, family history in the
Mm.
immediate family, and so it was kind of, oh, it's just a cyst. And so fortunately, my doctor recommended that I get an ultrasound. And so did an ultrasound. Ultrasound came back abnormal, and from there we did a biopsy, and then the biopsy did come back as cancer. And so this actually happened around Thanksgiving time, and so I was literally getting on a flight to go see my family in New Jersey, and had a conversation with my doctor that I had cancer. And so now I'm about to be the damper on Thanksgiving holiday, telling my family that I had cancer. So it was obviously tricky. I think that's something that can be felt on both ends when you are, I would imagine, a mom dealing with an experience, but also if you're a child having to tell your mom about a health scare, it's challenging. But it happened. I think for me, what was interesting is I also had to tell my father, who was battling pancreatic cancer at the time, that I had breast cancer. So a very tricky time. But we got through it. They were very supportive of me, and so I think when you just kind of rip that band-aid off and you have those hard conversations, you figure out your way through it.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about how survivorship has changed the way that you talk about health with friends and family. How do you use your platform?
So I actually just went to a doctor's appointment with one of my best friends a couple days ago who had a lump that she felt she and her doctor recommended a mammogram. And so I very much am pushing my friends, my family, everybody screaming from the mountaintops to make sure that you ask your doctor if you have a concern. I also encouraged her to see if they had 3D mammogramming options. And so just trying to be a resource for those around me who I know who have questions and who are trying to navigate a new diagnosis.
Is there something that you wish that you could have told your younger self or your loved ones about breast health earlier?
That it's not a older lady disease. I think
Mm.
definitely being 24 years old, cancer was nowhere on my radar. I think when you're at that age, you're invincible. You are out of college, you're starting your career, you're really living your best life, going out, probably partying. But then here comes this disease that essentially is going to change the trajectory of your life and something that you like I think it was mentioned earlier in the call that breast cancer is a chronic illness. There's treatments after treatment stops. And so just knowing that cancer is a possibility, but I would also say doing research. When I first got diagnosed, it was a whirlwind. I had this whole scroll of things I needed to do, a doctor for this, a doctor for that. I had to decide treatment. And I didn't really do research on my own. So I felt like I was kind of being guided in decisions to make. But in hindsight, I would have definitely looked into some things a little bit more on my own. My cancer did come back again 9 years later. So I was diagnosed again at 34 years old. So opted for a double mastectomy the second go round. But maybe if I would have done some research, I would have done that the first go round. So, but everything happens as it's supposed to happen. But I definitely think just arming young people with information and research, and so that they can have that at their fingertips to make the best decisions for themselves at the time would be best.
Absolutely. So tell me how you're using your advocacy, or you used your advocacy to, kind of help your healing journey. What does it mean to you today?
So for a long time, I felt like I was in survivor mode. Like breast cancer is a very emotional thing. I'm not gonna cry today because I've cried enough this week already, but um, I think just kind of getting out of survivor mode and realizing that this experience happened for a reason. How can we bring light to it and how can we help somebody else? And so I think this year really just felt charged to do something about it. And so, as it was mentioned, I did create my brand, Breast Care Besties, which is designed to really just help make cancer conversations more relatable and more approachable. I think when we hear that C word when you're younger, it's just kind of like, don't want to talk about it. But it's good to have conversations. It's good to have information. And so just doing what I can to support those who may not have breast health on their radar, young women specifically, but also supporting women as it relates to stress management as a whole. Stress can lead to other chronic illnesses beyond just breast cancer. And so we do activations, we do experiences in the Atlanta area for now, and just really bring women together to just breathe and pour back in, to just try to have tools to help reduce stress overall.
Amazing. So if you could give one sentence or one word of advice for mother-daughter pairs watching, what would it be?
In honor of the forum today as it relates to mothers and daughters, I would say have those hard conversations. Moms, y'all are superhumans and y'all want to protect your babies and you sometimes hold things to your chest. But as was mentioned, your children notice when you're stressed, they notice when something is off. And so just being transparent and vulnerable and having those conversations, even vice versa, for the young ladies who are listening, if you have a concern, maybe don't just tell your friend, tell your mom also. She could be a resource for you. She probably knows some things and can help you out. But having those conversations and just talking about the hard part would be what I would recommend.
Amazing. Thank you, L'Oreal, for your courage and your voice. And again, to echo what L'Oreal is saying, we do need to have conversations, and it needs to go two ways, mothers and daughters. My own daughter is on here. Shout out to Eris. You can't see her, but if you're looking at me, you're looking at her. We look just alike. But having those conversations are very important because it's your history is part of her history. So when daughters are going to have their exams with their doctors, they're going to need your history in order to lay a foundation for theirs. And having those important moments, those hard conversations it's what it's about. So, we're not holding any more information. We're going to have transparent conversations, even with our young children, because we know that breast cancer does not play fair. It's starting at younger ages, and older women are still being diagnosed with breast cancer. So let's make a commitment tonight that we're going to start opening up and having those more transparent conversations. So ladies, I thank you. As we bring this conversation full circle, I have one more question to ask of you. Chris-Tia often reminded us to love and live freely. The breast cancer was not a death sentence, but a call to live with more intention. What does that message mean to you personally and professionally? And how can mothers and daughters carry that spirit into their own health journeys? I'll start with Dr. Wheat because I know you have to go shortly. Can you start us off, please?
I just have to say, I love that. That is something that I have had to embrace in my own life in the past couple of years. What an amazing statement to say. And I think it really goes along with a lot of what we have talked about here. I really think that for me, that means to live every day with intention, to live every day to its fullest. And I think that that means to pay attention and to be grounded in yourself and in the world around you. And specifically in relation to some of this conversation, for both the moms and the daughters, that means to share your lives with each other. One of the things that I found was really important to live my life better was to stop checking my work life at the door. I started sharing those things with my kids. I started telling my kids, oh, I had this patient that had this thing happen today. I'm really sad about it. That made it easier to also share, oh, I'm going and getting my mammogram today. And when I had my first one and I had to have additional imaging, oh, mom has to go get additional imaging. It's probably going to be fine because it's just my first one. But it made, because we had started sharing those things, all of those conversations became easier. And I think that that made it easier for my kids to do the same. And it meant that we got to have more fun together when we go on vacation. We were not walking on eggshells around each other. We get to have more fun every single weekend together. There's still the teenage things, but we have more fun together. We enjoy each other and we live every moment as if it's intentional.
Amazing. Dr. Bolay, talk to us.
Oh my gosh, that was such a good one to follow. I mean, I think so many of the same things, so many things that Dr. Wheat said, I was thinking as well. I lost one of my dear friends to breast cancer 2 years ago. And I remember she always said growing old is a privilege. And that's something that's
Mm.
always stuck with me because she didn't have that privilege to grow old, as so many people that we've talked about or maybe have lost. And so I think I remember that every day, right? It's such a privilege to be here, and there's so much bad going on in the world. There's so much, you turn on the news and you can easily downward spiral at everything that's going on. And so I do think to remain grounded, set intentions, as we've been talking about, but I also think it's okay to be human, and I've kind of started, and I think I love this conversation so much because it makes me think about how I want to be as a mom as well, and just talking to my kids about things. And like I said, we don't filter things for my kids. They know what surgeries my husband was in or what patients I saw. They know that. And it's okay for me to be human. It's okay for me not to be strong. It's okay for me to be upset. It's okay for me to cry. And I think the more and more that we can do that in our family, and especially as women, I feel like we're supposed to be so strong, right? Because it's a house of cards. And if one card falls and if we let that card fall, it feels like everything's going to fall apart. But it's okay to be human. And I think that's something that's really, really important for all of us to remember. We are strong, but we can be vulnerable and be strong at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. Kelsey, what do you have for us?
Yeah, well, I'm really glad that Dr. Boley mentioned being strong. That comes up a lot. Like I have to be strong for my kids, and I'm always like, well, what does being strong really mean? And to Dr. Boley's points, like being strong means being human. And I immediately, when you started this talk, wrote down like talk openly. That is something that I live and breathe, and I really believe that trust is built in communication. And so for the mothers and daughters, like being able to have open communication will mean that you are inherently more connected. And when you're more connected, there can be more love and living because there's honesty and there's you see the kids and teenagers want to be seen, they want to be heard. And when parents are having open communication, they will feel seen and heard and trust you. And that will lead to connection, which is just where I think so much magic happens. And it doesn't have to be big to be amazing. Like I feel like some of that living and loving is built so much in the little moments. And especially when navigating really difficult things, those little moments are so important. You have to shift those expectations and really appreciate those little, I know some people call them glimmers, but really just those like little moments can be really magical. And I started talking a lot more just about mindfulness in general. And it's not about like meditation. Like I said earlier, I actually don't like to meditate as a therapist, but I will recommend it to whoever does. But I don't. But I love a good sunset, like love a bonfire. Like those are the moments that really transform me into like a present moment. And I think it's so important to have those things because we're just constantly on edge and our nervous system is right here. And that's why we're so quick to boil over. And so having those really mindful moments, whatever that looks like for each person, I think is going to allow us all to love freely and live fully. So thanks for having this conversation. I get really passionate about talking openly, so I'm glad to be here.
I love it. L'Oreal?
To reiterate what Kelsey said about like there's a lot of life that happens in those little moments, definitely agree with that. Showing up with love for those in your immediate circle, like that love part goes a long way. But also, I think it's important for us to chase our dreams. I don't think that it's ever too late. It's a blessing, like was said by Dr. Bolle. It's a blessing to grow old and to live to see an older age. And I think in that process, for the moms, I'm sure y'all have a lot going on and a lot of responsibilities, but I still think that it's important for women to put their dreams somewhere on that burner, because that self-fulfillment is very important just for your legacy and just for true happiness. Same thing for the young ladies on the call. Like share what your dreams are with your moms. Let her know she can support you. Tell your friends they can support you as well. And so just really making sure that you pour into yourself and you really go for what it is you want to go for because life is precious and we never know. So
And I think that's so important. Everything, I second everything that you all said. And Eris and I have a caveat of when Chris-Tia was going through her breast cancer battle, she had a list of things that she was living for. And sometimes we get so ingrained in our job, making things happen, being everything to everyone else. But when we examined her list, it didn't have anything about a job on there. There was nothing on there about, being a superhero or a superwoman. She simply had things on there like, I'm living for my niece, I'm living for my sister, my dad, I'm living for, seeing Eris come into the beauty of being a woman. So, sometimes the world is just pushing us to keep going, keep going, keep going. But sometimes it's the beautiful moments of just simply living for the person that's next to you that we sometimes rush by and on our way to work. So having those beautiful moments and those beautiful connections and touch points, I think that's really, really what life is about. So I thank you all for joining us. We're going to open it up now to some Q&A. I see a few questions in the chat, and I think I'm going to kick it over to Kelsey because someone wanted to know a little bit more about this K-dot method. So Kelsey, can you kind of explain to us what that is?
Yeah. So I have been a child life specialist for 13 years, I think, and I worked in the pediatric ICU for almost a decade. And so something that I do a lot is kind of come up with really simple but creative ways to teach kids about difficult topics. My brain often thinks about things from the perspective of a child. And so being able to break things down in a way that makes sense to kids. So I created something called the DOT method, and it's an interactive way to teach kids about cancer. It's available in a workbook format, and I'm hoping to release it very soon in Spanish as well. And it's something we've incorporated into the Pickles group curriculum as well. So it's essentially a body outline, and kids are identifying 3 colors. One represents healthy cells, one represents cancer cells, and then one represents treatment. And they actually like put the dots on the body and then cross them out and learn about treatment. The workbook, that's the DOT method in the simplest form. I've used it with a 2-year-old. I've used it with my 4-year-old to teach him about my own dad's cancer experience. But the workbook has a little bit more in it in terms of feeling faces, how to handle a good day, a difficult day, what more about side effects. So there's just a lot more information, but it's all interactive. So each page has an activity where kids can write or journal, and it's customizable. So it doesn't matter like who has cancer, what type of treatment, it kind of covers it all.
Amazing. We hope to get a peek at that resource because I might need to start there with the coloring book.
Yeah, no, I mean, it simplifies it. Also, I've gotten questions too, even just about health literacy. Like it can kind of simplify things in a way that can make sense for people. There's a glossary of terms at the front. And Pickles Group has a family cancer support kit as well that has a glossary of
Oh,
terms
wow.
and some steps. It's free. We ship it to hospitals and families that request it as well.
Wow, amazing.
And sorry, while I'm talking, I want to add one more plug because we also have a YouTube channel for Pickles Group where we've done a lot of panels. We've done how to talk to kids about cancer with different communities, different cancer types. So we have one coming up in October about how to talk to kids about breast cancer. I'll do about a 20-minute presentation and then we'll have a panel of parents sharing their lived experience. But we have on our YouTube channel previous ones we've done. So we have one on centering the experience of Black families. We have a Spanish language one. We have one that centers the experience of dads as well. So those are all available and we do those throughout the year and those are free as well. So we'd love people to tune in to if they want to learn a little bit more, hear directly from parents. And in December, we're having a youth panel where kids are going to actually share their perspective.
Okay. And to all of our guests, stay tuned because I believe that we'll have access to some of those resources at the end of our call. So hang tight. We can get you connected with some of this information. We have another question from Ingrid. She would like to know what are some of the biggest myths about breast cancer risk or prevention? And I'll open it up to our panel.
I can start. I think the biggest myth about risk that I get even from my doctor friends is, again, I don't have a family history of breast cancer, so I'm not really worried about it. And again, 85% of our patients don't have a family history of breast cancer. And it's so important. You could be at high risk without a family history. And I think I saw one of the other questions, maybe I can piggyback on that, about how to advocate for risk assessment or genetic testing. And I think this is where I've always put in the plug for risk assessment because screening actually should be thought of in a different way. We always kind of think of mammograms start at 40, right, for average risk, but really the process starts at 25. And what do I mean by that? It starts at 25 by risk assessment. So the American College of Radiology and Society of Breast Imaging recommend all women get risk assessed by the age of 25. And you might have seen recently in the news, Olivia Munn has been talking about this so much because her OBGYN did the Tyrer-Cuzick model of a risk assessment and figured out she had a high risk and ordered the MRI, which is what found her cancer. And so this risk assessment is available online. So every woman at the age of 25 should be getting risk assessed to see if they should be getting mammograms before 40. And they ask questions, yes, the family history, but there are other questions. When was your first period? How many children have you had, etc., that actually puts you at a higher risk and you might not even know about it. So the biggest myth that I see is this family history one. I just talked to a friend last night who was like, I'm 43, I haven't got my mammogram, but I don't have a family history. And she's a physician. And I'm like, you need to get your mammogram this week. Do not call me until you get your mammogram. Because the greatest risk of having breast cancer is having breast, you know? And so that's why we really, really, really need to talk about this as a conversation. The amount of times it pretty much comes up in every dinner conversation with my girlfriends, a question about breasts. So just remember that.
Thank you.
I'll add to that. I've heard people say, oh, well, if I don't get a mammogram, then I won't have cancer. It's not that you won't have cancer, it's that you won't find that you have the cancer and we won't be able to do anything about it. But I've heard that one a lot. So I'll just throw that one out there. And then also I don't feel a lump, so I don't need to go get screened, or I don't need to do anything. And the truth is, if we can find your cancer before we can palpate it, then that can be a really good thing. Or it could be really deep. And so just the breast awareness is really important, but it is not always enough. So the screening is really important. All of the aspects of the screening, the risk assessment, and also the imaging that we can do is all important. And so we have to keep all of those pieces together.
I
Thank
can
you.
chime in too. I know in the Black community specifically, I've heard from a few people that they believe they can get breast cancer from having a mammogram done. And so I think things of that nature, Dr. Bolle, you mentioned about the pain because the machine squeezes your breast and that to reduce the amount of radiation that's used. And so that's just one of those other things that people have these conversations, which would lead them to not go get the exam or the imaging, which could then lead to just issues later on. So that's one that I've heard.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest myths I see every day too is radiation. And Yolanda Lewis passed away from breast cancer, and she said that she was scared to get her mammograms because of the radiation. And before she passed, she said she wished she had been getting her mammograms. And I like to tell people, yes, there's a small amount of radiation that's used for the mammogram, but that radiation dose is so low, it's far below what the FDA recommends. And it's actually equivalent to 8 weeks of walking around in Chicago or Atlanta or walking around in background, because there's radiation everywhere. And it's so, we don't think about when we're walking around every day, and so that amount of radiation that you get has not been shown to cause breast cancer. There's a or any type of cancer. There's always a theoretical risk with radiation, but the dose that we use for mammograms is so low. We have even dose reducing techniques that we're using. It's not that much different than background, but the benefits of catching something before it can be felt with screening mammography far outweigh any theoretical risk that might be out there. And as soon as I start talking about that, or flying cross country in a plane, it kind of puts it more into perspective of how much radiation there is, but which is negligible. So low that now we recommend patients who are pregnant, even if they meet criteria for screening mammogram, they should be getting mammograms without shielding. So if you're 40 and you're pregnant, you should be getting mammograms. If you're 30 to 40 and you're high risk, you should be getting mammogram, and you don't even need a shield anymore.
Wow. So to your point, someone asked in the chat, can you explain how someone can advocate for genetic testing or family risk assessment? And I'm thinking that sometimes we want to advocate for this and we haven't reached that insurance milestone. So how can we advocate for the genetic testing and the family risk assessment?
I would do a risk assessment online. So, and honestly, get the risk assessment, because it's hard to get into genetics. It's hard to get into your primary. It's hard to get in anywhere, because even me, I literally I waited 3 weeks to get an order for my primary for my own breast MRI because I'm extremely dense. And I was reading it with my partner. So it's very hard to get these orders. I mean, it's crazy. Even knowing the system, it's hard to navigate. Being in the system, it's hard to navigate it. But you can easily start with a risk assessment online. And then you can tell your doctor, hey, I ended up being a little bit higher risk. And then you can get the referral to genetics. But that's something you can do, and always advocate for yourself. I mean, we have the medical knowledge. You are the expert on your own body. And so even if I'm telling you that something looks normal, there are breast cancers that don't show up on a mammogram or an ultrasound. So I always tell my patients, I don't see anything. It makes me feel really good about the negative mammogram and ultrasound. But if you feel like this is a change, let's get an MRI. Talk to your doctor about getting an MRI, because nothing's perfect and you are the expert in your body. So really advocate for yourself. And that starts with that online calculator.
Okay. Amazing advocacy. That's what we stand on. Ingrid has Ingrid has me tickled over here. She says, I try to have open conversations with the old women in my family about our health history and ways to stay proactive, even though no one has had breast cancer. She said, what's the best way to start or normalize those conversations, especially when older relatives may be more private about health topics? And I think this is a great question because, in my maturity, as I get older, some of you ladies know what I'm talking about, and you have your private summers and, personal winters. I was like, nobody told me about this. This is miserable. This is crazy. This is insane. So it's like, why did no one warn me of this? So, to that point, how do we begin to engage those conversations, especially when we may have some older relatives who may, not even share their personal health stories?
I actually think, I know I work with kids, so the opposite end of the spectrum, but I actually think like the kids may be the ones that can kind of change this narrative because, even just hearing some of the myths, like when I hear the questions that sometimes kids ask, it's definitely stemming from what they've heard, right? They might ask, can men get cancer, right? Can breast cancer. That's a really important thing for these kids to discuss because if there's a kid in the group that's dad has breast cancer. And so it can be really isolating. We've had a lot of conversations about a little off topic, but like smoking causing lung cancer. Not exactly. Like there's a lot of lung cancers that have nothing to do with smoking. And so these kids having these conversations breaks that stigma for the, older people around them. I know growing up, like I would ask for a tampon and my dad would be like, oh gosh, like tampons? So I was using a tampon the other day and I told my 3 and 5-year-old what it was, so that like generational cycle of how we're talking about things may be one way that kind of helps change that a little bit, because if those old people in the room have younger people in their world that they care about and love about, those might be the young people kind of challenging them on having these open conversations. So just could be one perspective.
And I would agree to that because, now if we don't have the conversations, guess where our kids are going to go? They're going to go to TikTok and figure it out. So I think it would be a much better, much healthier conversation about, our background rather than having them learn from the World Wide Web, which is not a bad thing. But I'd like to kind of guide the conversation more than, they discovering on their own. So.
I also like to give my patients, I will say like my adult patients, permission to use me as an excuse in a lot of ways. And so it might be that you go to your older family members and say, hey, my primary really needs this information because they're trying to figure out what's best for me. Then you're taking all of the blame off of yourself. And you can say, they're trying to figure out if maybe it's hot flashes, maybe it's this skin stuff, whatever it is. There are so many things that have genetic components to them, and family history really matters in helping us do these things. Even to the point of sometimes we're learning that if medications worked well on a family member, that it can be more helpful for you and let us do more trial and error. And so they might have been on medication that they don't want to tell you about, but if you bring it up in that way, then they might be more willing to open up. It has been my experience that parents don't necessarily, like parents of any age, don't necessarily want to talk about themselves, but if it will help their child, that changes the game. It changes the narrative for them. And so that could be a technique in order to help open up those conversations. Or get the kid who has to actually get the little kid to ask the questions sometimes too. Sometimes they're willing to open
pay
those.
Pay them $5 and have them ask a question, right? Thank you. I have a question here from Takia. She said, what advice would you give to women who feel dismissed or maybe unheard by their healthcare provider?
I would say find another healthcare provider. I know that's easier said than done. There's not enough of us. But it was mentioned in my my bio that one of the things I do is be a coach. And that's because I've seen so many physicians leave healthcare and it makes me very frustrated. So physicians are definitely burnt out and it's impacting the care that everybody is receiving right now. But that is absolutely no excuse for your provider to not listen to you. And so if you're not being heard, I would recommend that you give people the benefit of the doubt at least one time. We all have our bad days, and not make an assumption that it was about you per se. I would try one more time. If that doesn't work, then I would say it's time to find somebody else that maybe relates to you better. And it might be in the same office and it might be elsewhere. I wouldn't stop trying to advocate for the things that you need because I don't want you to delay the care that you need, but you absolutely deserve a healthcare provider that will listen to you, that takes you seriously, and that can help you get to the healthiest you. That is absolutely our job.
Yeah.
Speaking
I'm
sorry, go ahead, Dr. Emily. No, go ahead.
I know I am just echoing everything that was said because I do think it's hard. Like medicine is really hard right now. People are burnt out, people are leaving, there's just not enough of us. And we're trying to see so many patients in less amounts of time. And so it's impossible all the way around, but you have to, yes, I agree. You should find a care provider that listens to you, but we don't want you to delay your care. So don't leave until you found another one because you might still need the other one to get the orders to navigate the system. And it's okay to keep advocating for yourself and be persistent. Like I was saying, I was very persistent about my order. I'd emailed my provider every day until I got their order for 2 weeks. And that's okay, because I know I needed it. And so what worries me are the people who might not have the medical knowledge that I have to know to advocate for that. And so it's okay to be persistent. You have to advocate for yourself, especially in the world of medicine right now.
Well, I definitely hope that our little brownies and Girl Scouts are listening to what you all are saying, especially that there's a shortage of good physicians. And I hope that, you all won't be shy about stepping into the medical field. We'll have to get you some money or something and support you, but we're here for you. So I want to see some doctors come from over there.
If any of you want to be doctors and want to hear more information, then reach out. Happy to talk about that.
Dr. Wheat, I'm going to meet you on that too. I will take them over there if they want to. And I'm a former educator, so
I will go down there. I am happy to go down there.
I can tutor you in math.
We do have a question.
Sure.
Here in the room here with what troop number?
Oh, it's 5 troop members in here.
Oh, we have several Girl Scouts in the room, so we have some questions that came up.
21006, 25945, 21553, 20152, and 21553.
So,
That is Daisy Sing Ambassador.
all right. So one of the questions piggybacks on what we were just talking about. So we have someone here who was asking about dense breasts. So if you have dense breasts, there is a recommendation of getting an ultrasound, but sometimes doctors push back on that. What do you suggest that a person should do if they have dense breasts and want to get an ultrasound?
Well, let's start by saying what dense breast means. So dense breast means that you have a lot of white tissue. So for the people, everyone listening, so if you have, I liken it to a polar bear in a snowstorm. So if a mass or cancer is a polar bear and it's standing in a snowstorm, it's very difficult to see that mass. If you have a polar bear that is standing in a field of grass, that polar bear is going to stand out. It's much easier to see. So having dense breast tissue is like looking for that polar bear in a snowstorm, really, really, really hard to see. So I would pull up the recommendations that we have from the American College of Radiology. And it's not only an ultrasound, because if you're extremely dense, like I am, you should be getting MRIs actually. And so any sort of, if you're dense, which is by the way, normal, people get freaked out by the word dense, but 50% of our population has dense breast tissue. So half of us walking around have dense breast tissue. If you're heterogeneously dense, you should really push for that ultrasound. If you're extremely dense, push for the MRI. Some places don't have an MRI available. We do at Northwestern, but some places don't. So having an ultrasound, even if you're extremely dense, is better than no supplemental screening. You still need your mammogram though. People try and get out of your mammogram. You still need your mammogram because these supplemental screening tools work in addition to the mammogram. But I would show the literature, and even our Illinois state laws now say that insurance companies are supposed to cover supplemental screening in women that have dense breast tissue. So your doctor should be ordering this for people that have dense breast tissue and advocating for themselves. And if they're not, then they need to be updated in the updated recommendations.
And one thing that we use at TGIN Foundation, we actually have a prosthetic breast that we take with us as we go out into the community and educate. And it has what a normal breast should feel like. We also have an example of a dense breast and then one that has a lump in it. So we use that prosthetic as a means to educate women on, which one does your breast feel like? And as you said, a lot of us, I have dense breasts. So we use the prosthetic to educate people to say, this is maybe what you should feel for, or this is what it would feel like. So definitely the education and again, how much education can we not use to inform ourselves? We have a couple more questions here in the chat. Jacinia asked about what type of holistic or lifestyle factors, maybe like nutrition, exercise, or stress management, really make a difference?
So I think that the data says that healthy living helps you for all types of cancer and all types of things. I don't think that there's a single thing that data has shown that it doesn't help. So eating fruits and vegetables, getting enough sleep, and exercising helps everything, absolutely everything. And if you do have cancer, it lets your body have more, I'm going to say more of a reserve and be better prepared to fight the cancer. And so it puts you in a better starting place in order to fight that cancer. I think it's really important to say that if you're not doing those things, though, that doesn't cause the cancer.
Good information, definitely.
And so I don't want anybody to think, oh, because I had junk food, it gave me breast cancer. It's just that if you eat healthy and live healthy, you're at a better starting spot.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. And I just would add to that you have to live your life too, right? I mean, I think that's something, especially like when you go on Instagram or you watch YouTube, and I love how health forward we are now. I love this, that we're trying to eat healthy. But it's okay if you don't eat healthy one day. It's okay if you go to a TGIN event and have a drink or two. It's okay. Like, we can live our life, but we also have to live our life healthy overall. And so without beating ourselves up, we talked about cortisol levels. L'Oreal brought that up. We want to keep our stress and our anxiety and our cortisol levels down. We want to eat healthy, but we also have to live our life.
Exactly. That would be my sister's mantra because she loved the Cheeto every now and then. So, Marcia asked, is stage 0 DCIS considered cancer or precancer cells?
Sorry, the question was about DCIS.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we do consider DCIS a very early cancer. And if you look at the literature and you look at the news, there's a lot of conflicting things out there. But the standard of care right now is to treat DCIS as a very earliest sign, the very earliest type of breast cancer. And that means there's cells that are staying within the duct, have not gone outside the duct into the rest of the tissue. So it is extremely treatable, and it's the earliest stage that we can catch breast cancer.
Okay. And if Takia asks, if someone has the BRCA gene, the BRCA gene, would you recommend a double mastectomy?
So I think this is having a mastectomy, and I think there's, which is basically the removal of all breast tissue, is a very personal choice. And so it's really a discussion between you and your doctor. We know that if you have genetic mutations such as the BRCA gene, you're at elevated over 20% lifetime risk of having breast cancer. But whether or not you have a mastectomy is really a personal choice between you and your doctor. There's so many factors that go into that. Do you want to breastfeed? What do your breasts mean to you? It's a decision that a doctor cannot make and should not be making for a patient. It's a very personal decision. But what we're here to do is give you that information. And if you choose to keep your breasts, which so many patients do with genetic mutations, then we need to have you on a very strict screening regimen. So screening mammograms and screening MRI staggered by every 6 months with clinical breast exams worked into that, and potentially risk reduction medications such as tamoxifen. And you would work with your multidisciplinary team, your breast radiologist, your breast surgeon, your breast oncologist, to figure out what is best for you.
And we have one final question, but I think we already answered that one regarding additional testing after a mammogram if you had dense breast tissue. But Dr. Boley, could you reemphasize again what other testing we could have besides a mammogram for dense breast?
So if you're getting, if you have dense breast tissue, number one, you need to be getting your mammogram every year, and you should make sure your mammogram is being done with 3D mammography, which is tomosynthesis. And most of the big institutions have tomosynthesis or 3D mammography, but some of the rural areas don't. And so make sure you're going to a place that you are getting those 3D mammograms. At Northwestern, all patients get 3D mammograms. So if you're going there for your care, you are getting them already. And then if you are heterogeneously dense or extremely dense, talk to your doctor about supplemental screening with ultrasound or MRI. If you're extremely dense, we're really pushing you towards MRI now, which is 10% of the population. But because some institutions don't have the access to the MRI, at the very least, you can get a screening ultrasound, or contrast enhanced mammography is also being done in some of the more rural hospitals as well, adding contrast to your mammogram. So make sure you're getting some sort of supplemental screening.
Thank you.
Dr. Piper, I have a question too.
I'm sure.
Dr. Bullock, you mentioned earlier about, I guess, the recommendation now being to be aware instead of doing a self-exam. I am curious about, I guess, the language around that, because to me, if you're being aware, that means you are checking your breast. So what was the inflammatory thing to where that language changed from self-exam to just being aware?
I think the problem, the everything we do in medicine is really evidence-based, right? And so there really were never randomized control trials that said clinical breast exams decrease morbidity and mortality. So what we found is a lot of formal clinical exams could lead to a lot of false positive exams. But if you ask me, I'm going to tell you, if you spend a week in my clinic, you're going to see so many people who find their own lumps. And so we've kind of changed the language. Our societies all changed the language to breast aware. But to me, the way to be breast aware is doing a clinical exam. So it's kind of semantics. But But the bottom line is if you're doing a clinical breast exam and not paying attention, then that's not helpful either. So making sure that you know your breasts is the most important message of all. So know your breasts that you can know what's abnormal, and whether that's once a month, a very formal exam, or just, feeling them when you think about it, know your breasts.
Thank you.
And Eris put in the chat that she remembers when she was younger that I had a breast hang tag in the shower that kind of, showed you how to do your exam. And that's one of the things that we use at the TGIN Foundation when we're educating in the community. We make sure that every woman has a breast hang tag that you can just simply take and put in your shower. And it's a reminder to, do it. If you can't remember to do it, as often as you need to, it's a reminder that's hanging there that you should at least be doing it once a month. All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, I would just love to thank everyone on the panel for your insight and your heart. We had some very dynamic conversations, a lot of information to be shared. Definitely, I have grown in my knowledge about breast health on this evening. I would just love to thank every one of you for participating. Thank you to our troop over there, our future doctors. We look forward to seeing you really soon. It's how we honor Chris-Tia's legacy and we protect our families and change the future of women's health. Final call to action. We encourage you to do your screenings and your self-checks. We invite attendees to follow TGIN Foundation's resources and community events. And we would like to express gratitude again for the Lurie Cancer Center for putting on this wonderful event, TGIN, and the Pickles Group, Dr. Bolay, Lurie, and our other doctor. She has gone on to do what she needed to do for her family this evening, but we thank you all so much for joining us. And I will send it back over to Monique for final words.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think you did such an amazing job, Dr. Piper. It is such a pleasure to partner with you. You are literally the best moderator ever. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that was on our panel today. I know I was driving you all crazy with all of my emails. Thank you, thank you, thank you for answering the call. And I have gotten so many inside chats from our panel who wants to come out and actually do events and collaborate with the Girl Scouts. So I'm super excited and looking forward to more events with us all partnering and collaborating together. It is the end of working in silos, because the way society is today, we are so much better together. And what you just say, Dr. Piper, we are changing the future of women's health. I think we are absolutely doing that, one conversation at a time, and looking forward to investing in our young people as well. Thank you all for spending the evening with us. Have a great evening. Everyone who attended, thank you as well. Please be on the lookout for my emails where I will be giving you all of these resources. And if there were any questions that you had that were not answered, please feel free to email me at monique.clemens@northwestern.edu, and I will share your questions with the appropriate folks on our panel. Thank you again. Peace and good night.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.